bonita bandera, qué bonita bandera, qué bonita bandera es la bandera puertorriqueña.
Ya tú sabes, para toda la gente que movieron la cadera, aquí está otra cosita caliente, mucha sabrosura. Proyecto uno otra vez con mi gente de Real to Real. ¡Rega, rega!
This award is an appreciation, gratitude, and the love that we have built around you, because all the time that Sonia or I have an idea, the first thing you tell us is that smile, that Matt Damon smile that he gives us, okay? And he says yes. That to us means so much, and we thank you, and we're here for you as well as I know that you're here for us. Round of applause for Jeffrey.
Of the Newark Municipal Council and the City Council.
I don't know what to say. Lo siento, pero mi esposa es bienvenidos. Me llamo Jeffrey Freeze, soy la biblioteca. I want to say thank you all for joining us here today. It's been a wonderful event, and it's been a fantastic way too of spending my birthday.
Y ahora tenemos un honor súper especial. Por los últimos 3 años que nosotros hemos corrido el desfile, nosotros escogimos de Puerto Rico a una persona que trae cultura, que trae el calor, el amor, que trae lo que es ser puertorriqueño en Puerto Rico y aquí en los Estados Unidos, específicamente aquí en los Estados Unidos. A mí me hablaron mucho de usted, pero mucho de usted. Sonia se hizo encargo, porque usted no sabe a quién usted conoce. Usted habla del espíritu, de ese espíritu de la tierra, ese espíritu que te trae y te dice que y que no. Ese es el espíritu de nosotros. Sonia Vera. Quiero que sepan que este es un honor que el pueblo puertorriqueño de aquí del norte, el pueblo puertorriqueño aquí del estado de New Jersey, el pueblo puertorriqueño aquí de los Estados Unidos y el pueblo de Puerto Rico le presenta este honor.
Good evening, everybody. La Paz, Taíno. Peace and blessings to all of you who came today to this amazingly unique and historical event here in the city of Newark. I would love to give thanks to the Puerto Rican Day Parade Incorporated for giving me this great opportunity to introduce our special guest tonight. I would also like to give thanks to Sonia Vera, a dedicated community organizer, a longtime representative of the Puerto Rican Day Parade Committee. In my eyes, she is a strong woman, a warrior, and an amazingly loving friend. I truly appreciate this opportunity. It's an honor to me, myself, to my brothers from the Lost Tribes Foundation. I truly thank you. I know this event wasn't an easy task. Sonia looked high and low for supporters and was met with much opposition, just like many of us who are out here pushing to spread the indigenous identity to our community. But through her dedicated work and her willpower, she did not stop there. And for that, we have this event today. I would like to also thank the Newark Library for allowing us to have this event here. It is a true pleasure, and we truly appreciate that you can continue to embrace and support cultural values, arts, and education for our city in Newark. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce our first presenter, Cacique Martín Casiba Olpid Vaguilla. Martín Casiba Olpid Vaguilla is the leader of El Concilio Taíno Guatumacu a Borinquen, a community organization with the mission to increase public knowledge and awareness of the true Taíno history and culture throughout the island of Puerto Rico and abroad. Through education and sharing the customs, language, craft work, and conducting arrietos. Please, a round of applause for Cacique Martín Olpid Vaguilla.
Muchas gracias. Como les dije anteriormente, es un placer para mí estar aquí con ustedes. Muy agradecido por las personas que componen el comité de este festival, ¿se puede llamarlo? Del comité. Ok, pues muchas gracias por la invitación y por tener en consideración a nuestra gente. Gracias. Yo les quiero decir, ¿verdad?, que a mí me habían dicho que para hablar sobre la existencia del pueblo taíno, y yo me encuentro muy contento de poder hablar de todo esto, ¿verdad? Porque muchas veces cuando aquí en nuestras vidas, tal vez acá en los estados, ¿verdad?, las personas vienen, noto que las personas aquí se identifican más con su cultura, con sus raíces, y eso me honra mucho porque no crean, allá hay el deseo de buscar, pero hay que hacer un poquito de esfuerzo porque las personas conozcan más sobre la cultura. Pero una de las cosas que sí les quiero decir es que eso está en el corazón latente del pueblo puertorriqueño, y allí pues yo les quiero decir que mi abuela fue la que comenzó todo este sentimiento en mí. Soy huérfano de padre, mi padre lo mataron, yo no lo conocí apenas cuando yo tenía 3 meses de nacido, y mi abuela fue la que influyó mucho porque mi madre tuvo que venir para los estados para trabajar en todo esto. Mi abuela siempre me decía: yo vengo de indios, vengo de un pueblo indígena. Tu abuela viene de un pueblo indígena, que se refería a la abuela de ella, y ella dice que venía de una india que se llamaba Güeyara, que fue bautizada y le pusieron por nombre Gregoria. Buscamos ese nombre y aparece en el registro de los indios de Cagua, en San Lorenzo. Eso quiere decir que sí hay pueblo indígena que vienen trayéndose a través de o sea, estaba hablando de las edades, desde la época de la invasión española. Y podemos decir, y perdónenme que yo diga esta expresión, porque siempre lo digo así, después de la invasión terrorista de los españoles a nuestras tierras. Así como lo tenemos que decir. Le queremos decir también que, yo le quiero decir que mi abuela cuando empezó a hablarme me hablaba de muchas palabras indígenas. Mis tíos se tomaron el momento de coger y apuntar todas esas palabras. Nosotros tenemos muchas palabras que no se encuentran, pero que sí que son palabras que son parte del lenguaje ancestral antiguo. Le queremos decir también que mi abuela nos hablaba mucho y sonaba a través de las plantas. Yo recuerdo que los vecinos acudían a ella porque ella era una persona que conocía sobre las propiedades de las plantas, y siempre me mandaba a mí a buscar alguna planta medicinal y me decía: tal planta es esto, búscamela. Y yo la que me faltaba conocer era la suelda con suelda, pero ya gracias a Dios la identifiqué. Antes de morir ella, me había mostrado cuál era la suelda con suelda, que era la que yo no sabía. Eso es la que usaban para la fractura los indígenas. Eso quiere decir que a través del tiempo, los taínos seguían, a pesar de la imposición española, ellos seguían con sus tradiciones. Ellos traían muchas palabras y costumbres que se quedaron plasmadas en mi memoria, porque yo fui un nieto criado por una nieta de una abuela que era ancestral indígena, que de acuerdo a ella hablaba el lenguaje de los taínos en Rabanal de Sidra. Yo siempre recuerdo también que ella me decía que había un cacique que se llamaba el cacique Magollo, y yo decía, pero si no existe un cacique con ese nombre. Me pensé que eran cuentos de mi abuela. Entonces ella me contaba cosas que era como decir que un español vino desde Santo Domingo y dice que de allá él conoció 3 secretos. Y dice que esos 3 secretos le fueron revelados por una india. Y uno era unas minas de oro, otro era la cura de la sífilis por medio de una planta de palo santo, decía ella, pero es el guayacán. Y otra era la fuente de la juventud. ¿De acuerdo como ella me decía? Pero ¿qué viene pasando? Esa fuente de juventud yo siempre lo vi como un cuento. Pero da casualidad de que cuando llega Juan Ponce de León a Puerto Rico, él llegó al sitio donde se llama el cacique Macuya. Y imagínense, ella me dio a mí el cacique Magollo, y el cacique donde llegó Juan Ponce de León a conocer la fuente de la juventud fue Macuya. Macuya era el cacique que comprendía la parte de ahí bonito, que era Cuyón, y ahí donde precisamente coge ahí bonito y Cuamo, que es donde están los baños de Cuamo, baños termales de Cuamo. Pues mi abuela decía, yo le dije, pues eso tiene que ser los baños termales de Cuamo. Le pregunté a mi abuela, mamá, dígame dónde era que se encontraban esos baños de Cuamo. Ella me decía, es que no me acuerdo. Yo dije, mamá, pero trata de hacer memoria. Y me decía, esto era como por ahí bonito, por ahí. Yo dije, para confirmar. Ya entonces ella me confirmó algo que le había dicho su abuela. Están los taínos presentes porque lo venían trayendo de boca en boca a través de sus abuelos, hijos y nietos. Siempre nos decían en nuestras casas, y estoy seguro que en la casa de muchos de ustedes dijeron, ustedes tenían una abuela taína o una abuela indígena, ustedes tenían un abuelo indígena. Estoy seguro que así se lo decían, como le pueden decir también tenían alguien que venía de la isla Canaria o que era español, pero a mí siempre lo que me importaba era indígena, porque eso era lo que me llenaba a mí. Yo vi que cuando mi abuela encendía el fogón, una de las cosas que hacía era que ella ponía las 3 piedras, por la noche cubría un tronco con ceniza, y cuando lo cubría con ceniza yo siempre la observaba, pero no sabía qué era lo que ella estaba haciendo. A la mañana siguiente ella se levantaba, sacaba la ceniza y empezaba a soplar hasta que volvía de nuevo a traer el fuego. Ese era el secreto de mantener el fuego, que lo hacían las taínas antiguamente, y mi abuela traía ese secreto que para mí tenía mucho valor. Cosa que nosotros tenemos que atesorar y saber que sí, nuestra cultura, nuestros ancestros estaban presentes en cada tradición de nuestro pueblo, y todavía. Yo me propuse, cuando fui a la Universidad de Puerto Rico, concentrarme solo en los asuntos taínos, en las artes plásticas, en los asuntos taínos. Todo lo que fuera taíno era lo que a mí me importaba. Y ahí fue donde empecé a leer las crónicas y empecé a ver cómo los invasores afectaron a Santo Domingo, ¿verdad? Cuando fueron allí, que ellos hicieron miles de masacres. Ellos inventaban todo tipo de tortura a los sitios. Ellos lo niegan ahora, pero esto es la realidad de lo que está escrito en las crónicas. Lo que hicieron en nuestras tierras, lo que hicieron en Cuba. Estas cosas están escritas y nadie las puede negar. Estas cosas tenemos que tenerlas presentes. ¿Saben por qué? Porque nosotros, si olvidamos lo que sucedió en el pasado, estamos condenados a repetirlo. Por lo tanto, tenemos que recordar todos los días Y hay gente que me dicen a mí, tú no puedes estar diciendo ya tantas cosas. Bueno, yo tengo que decirlas porque si no, Dios se van a repetir. Yo necesito educar al pueblo. Y la cosa es que hemos estado educando al pueblo que todos los días yo decía, Dios mío, ¿cuándo nos darán una escuela para poder, ahora que están haciendo tantas escuelas en Puerto Rico? Mire, fuimos a declarar la capital taína a Guayanilla y el alcalde nos dijo, tengo una escuela ahí si le interesa. Yo le dije, vamos a verla. Y cuando nos mostraron esa escuela, estaba destruida totalmente, vandalizada, y como era una hacienda antigua, porque era la primera escuela de Guayanilla, está bien deteriorada. Y nosotros cuando la vimos, nosotros con los ojos así bien abiertos, bien contentos y bien agradecidos, y ellos decían, pero ¿cómo les puede gustar a ustedes todo este montón de polillas? Y nosotros le dijimos, porque nosotros no teníamos nada para enseñar acerca de la cultura taína. O sea, nosotros tenemos que seguir llevando esto como si fueran unas buenas nuevas a todos nuestros países caribeños. Estoy seguro que en los países del centro, como Santo Domingo y Cuba, todavía estos viejos siempre, los ancestros, estos viejos que vienen trayendo de sus ancestros, traen muchas tradiciones, porque yo las he leído, las he visto en internet, y son tradiciones que son completamente taínas. Ellos vienen conservando, esos viejos vienen conservando esas tradiciones, por lo tanto, están ahí. Y muchas veces las personas dicen, ay, pero ¿qué tienen ellos de indio? Porque se ven como si fueran más africanos, porque se ven más blancos. Miren, sí, porque ellos son producto de las violaciones que hicieron a las indias. Esas personas que ustedes ven ahí, que aunque no tengan el pelo como tenía como celda los indios, esas personas son taínos. Y eso a mí nadie me lo va a quitar de la cabeza. Porque en el TOA, dice las crónicas bien claro, dice que iban los africanos y violaban a las indias, esposas de los indios que iban a trabajar en las haciendas. Y la que se resistía la mataban. Y los españoles hacían lo mismo, que estaban explotando sexualmente a las indias y las prostituían. Y eso es lo que nosotros tenemos que recordar siempre. Ahí te dicen, no, eso no debe recordarnos. Eso hay que recordarlo. Porque si nosotros no recordamos estas cosas, se nos olvidan y las vamos a repetir. Mi abuela siempre decía, mi mamá, que mi mamá nunca me hablaba mucho de los asuntos taínos, pero sí ella estaba bien envuelta en asuntos espirituales taínos, indígenas, ancestrales. Pero ella me dijo una vez algo que a mí me chocó, y me dijo que antiguamente los españoles cogían a las indias que se huían por los montes, dice que con una tenaza le cortaban los pezones. Eso me lo dio mi mamá. Y yo le dije, pero ¿cómo tú sabes eso? Me dice, porque me lo decía mi mamá, me lo decía mi abuela. Mi abuela nunca me lo dio a mí, pero se lo digo a ella. Esto es para que ustedes vean las clases de situaciones que corrían nuestras indias. Y dice que todas estas cosas que sucedían, pues son parte de nuestra historia. Y la traían nuestros abuelos en su remota memoria y nos la transmitieron a nosotros. Muchas personas pues dicen, pues este señor lo que tiene es odio. No es odio, yo no odio a nadie, ni siquiera a los españoles odio. Pasa que yo tengo que recordar lo que ellos hicieron, ¿entiendes? Yo no tengo odio de nada, porque yo lo que hago es simplemente recordar, repetir lo que está escrito en las crónicas. Somos taínos y aquí estamos. Y yo le voy a decir una cosa, a mí me hicieron la prueba del ADN. Es una cosa que estoy, y cuando metieron, yo salía precisamente esa semana para España, y yo le dije al profesor Martínez Cruzado, yo quiero que usted me dé esos resultados esta semana, porque yo necesito llevarme ese resultado para España, para que ellos sepan que estamos aquí. Esa semana, un jueves, me acuerdo, pues fue cuando él me dio, yo salía sábado, cuando él me dio a mí el resultado. Cuando salió el resultado, pues decía haplogrupo C y de las Amazonas. Y yo cuando me dio ese resultado, yo me reía y lloraba y me reía. Pero miren, era que la emoción era tan grande que yo no podía dar crédito. Y me habían dicho, para los que creen en aquello espiritual, que ese día precisamente, me dieron el día y todo, yo iba a recibir una noticia que me iba a sentir que me había recompensado todo mi esfuerzo por mi trabajo. Mi trabajo estaba concentrado en los taínos nada más. Y la noticia que recibí fue esa. Para mí es un tesoro eso que recibí. Estamos presentes y aquí están todos y cada uno de ustedes. Todas las personas que se encuentran en el Caribe, todos, yo los veo como si fueran taínos ancestrales. Y les quiero contar una experiencia que yo tuve cuando fui a la tierra de nuestro hermano aquí, a Santo Domingo. Llegué hasta la Maguana, porque ese era mi sueño, llegar hasta allí. Porque yo había soñado con las montañas y el sitio, y exactamente así como lo soñé, así lo vi cuando llegué. Cuando llegué allí, yo me concentré en los tambores cuando estaban tocando. Cuando de momento yo abro mis ojos, veo que vienen muchos taínos caminando hacia mí. Y yo me sorprendí porque yo dije, Dios mío, pero esto es una visión. ¿Saben qué eran? Gente local del sitio, que vienen caminando hombres, mujeres, niños, uniformados, de la escuela. Mire, yo los veía como si estuvieran sin ropa, porque todos ellos venían en el lado espiritual hacia nosotros. Cuando vi yo a todos aquellos taínos, miren, el areito que hicieron, cómo cogieron esos pasos inmediatamente, porque eso está latente en el corazón de cada persona que se encuentra en el Caribe. Por eso a mí me dicen de una persona, cuando me llegó una muchacha que eso era, mire, prieta, grande, así con un cuerpo pues que no parece de taína, y ella no había quien le hiciera bailar bomba y plena. Pero mire, esa muchacha cuando le hicieron las pruebas salió taína. Todos la conocen aquí, caona, ¿saben, verdad? Y esa muchacha, eso es para que ustedes vean que quién puede cambiar una cosa que siente en el corazón la persona, porque es que eso ya lo llevan adentro. Si usted se identifica con los taínos, porque usted es taína. Si usted se siente identificado con esta cultura, es porque hay algo en su familia que trae eso, y nadie le va a quitar eso. Aquí estamos, aquí está usted, aquí está su familia, aquí está su pueblo. Por lo tanto, tenemos que honrar esta primera raíz. Nos gusta la bomba y la plena, nos gusta toda la cultura africana, nos gusta tal vez el flamenco, pero eso viene de afuera. Lo de nosotros es lo local. Lo que estamos en esta tierra del principio es lo que nosotros creemos y buscamos. Me siento bien orgulloso de esta raza. La espiritualidad nuestra, nosotros hemos logrado algo, y es que cuando nosotros le decimos a las personas que nos vestimos como indios, hay algunas personas que dicen, ustedes se visten de indios porque ustedes son como un show. No un show, es que nosotros nos vestimos como indios. ¿Sabe por qué? Para honrar a los ancestros, porque nadie lo había hecho ni nadie se había acordado de ellos. Ahora nos acordamos. Y allá en Puerto Rico, ¿sabes qué? No se crean que nosotros estamos, cuando hacemos la ceremonia nuestra, con las falditas estas que venimos aquí nos ponemos. No, allá estamos los varones con las nalgas por fuera, como estaban los indios antiguamente. Y eso no es nada, les quiero decir. Fuimos a Guayanilla la última vez, donde declaramos la capital y es un pueblo retirado. Cuando fuimos allí, hicimos después una presentación aquí con las falditas estas que usamos. Cuando fuimos ellos, todo el pueblo protestó porque ellos decían, no, así no estaban los indios, nosotros lo queremos como ustedes estaban aquí al principio. Y me extrañó porque la mayoría de la gente como que no quieren eso. Y ese pueblo lo pidió a gritos diciendo, nosotros los queremos ustedes como son. Y hemos visto el orgullo que ellos sienten porque estemos allí y el pueblo cada día acepta más. Sé que hay pueblos que necesitan más seguimiento, pero nosotros trabajamos los 365 días del año, las 24 horas del día, para traer la cultura ancestral y el orgullo por todo esto. Aquí nosotros no hay lucro propio. Si así fuera, pues yo tuviera una mansión y tuviera pues un carro del año, y lamentablemente yo tengo que depender de los demás para que me lleven a los sitios, porque aquí yo no me lucro de nada. Así que lo único que yo les digo a ustedes es que allí estamos para el 25 de julio con una celebración grande, que están todos invitados. Para donde ustedes quieran ir a Puerto Rico, ya ustedes saben que allí vamos a estar. Y cuando usted quiera ver una presentación bien maravillosa, pues allí vamos a estar también. Lo mismo que yo creo que los compañeros pues les van a decir. Los taínos existimos, los taínos estamos aquí y vamos a seguir aquí y nada ni nadie nos va a dejar, o sea, nos va a quitar esto que somos. Esto nos llena cabalidad, nos llena el alma, el espíritu, nos llena el cuerpo, porque esta es la cultura que nos quitaron, nos arrebataron hace muchos años, pero prevaleció en nuestros viejos. Y nosotros somos los hijos, los nietos de aquellos viejos que ellos no pudieron, que ellos no pudieron quemar, ni pudieron destruir. Aquí estamos.
Okay, let's continue on with the presentation. Cacique Martin has a 2 CD disc he is promoting here today. It's of the culture, of the language and music of the Taíno group. He's also starting a school that they actually been started already, he told me. But this is a part of it. The CD are going $20 per CD, and they'll be bringing it in shortly. Go ahead, Sonia.
I would like to represent appreciation award to my dear friend throughout the whole year. She's been helping me get this program to where it is today. I want Milagro Santiago to please come up to the podium, please. Milagro, like I said, she's always helped me, always has helped me, and thank you so much for always being my helping hand, and I appreciate you so much.
Buenas noches. Son sorpresas que uno no espera. Me cogieron. Me siento muy contenta esta noche y he visto tantas cosas hermosas. Nuestra herencia latina, nuestra gente hermosa, que muchas veces nosotros no entendemos, pero hoy hemos aprendido muchísimas cosas sobre nuestros taínos. El baile ha sido muy hermoso. Quiero decir que cuando yo puedo hacer algo para mi gente, lo hago con amor. Por eso con amor recibo este reconocimiento que yo no esperaba. Ustedes, yo los veo como un árbol, el árbol de la vida, llenito de luces, porque veo su rostro, su sonrisa. Es hermosa nuestra gente. Debemos de querernos, respetarnos y amarnos siempre. Darnos la mano. Cuando vemos que alguien está caído, levantémoslo, porque mañana no sabemos si es uno de nosotros los que nos vamos a caer. El amor que siga siempre en nuestros corazones y que lo compartamos para siempre. Gracias.
Thank you, Milagro. I have another appreciation award I would like for my dear friend, Lisa Padilla, to please Lisa has helped me throughout numerous years. She has helped me with the pageant. She's helped me with the judges. She's my confidant. And I would like to give her this recognition, appreciation award. Thank you, Lisa.
Buenas noches a todos. Yo soy una persona de muy pocas palabras y muy agradecida para poder ayudar en unos eventos hermosos, ya que también la juventud necesita aprender y apreciar. Y eso es todo. Buenas noches, gracias.
Aquí tenemos la tesorera Marisol Ramírez que quiere dar unas presentaciones.
Good evening, everyone. On behalf of Councilman Aníbal Ramos and the Newark Municipal Council, we have a commendation, and on behalf of Senator Teresa Ruiz, we have a Senate citation for Dr. Josué Barreiro. And we also like to present one to Cacique Jorge Esteves. Gracias a todos por participar hoy con nosotros y te agradecemos tu participación y amistad con nosotros este año.
I have one award, and this award is very special to me. This award is to my daughter, Jada Williams. My daughter is the captain of our drill team. She's been helping me for 2 years. I want to give her this award. Appreciation. She's a senior and she's going to be leaving us. So I want her to know that I appreciate all her work throughout the 2 years. And even though she only has this year because she believes in us, she wants to go to Florida State University. And I was hoping that Irma would scare her. And she would change her mind. But, she knows that I love her and that I only wish her the best. And the parade is giving you this appreciation because you know that we love you.
I really don't know what to say, but I kind of do this for my mom and for the youth and for the program, the Puerto Rican Parade, and I've been doing it since I was 8 years old, but I can say thank you, I guess.
Bueno. Que vive Boricua. Oh, this is a beautiful thing. This is a beautiful thing. Let's continue on with our program. Next presenter is Cacique Jorge Baracutay Esteves, who will speak on the survival of Taíno in Quisqueya and cultura elements in the Caribbean. Jorge Baracutay Esteves, a Taíno from the Dominican Republic, has worked at the National Museum of the American Indian, part of the Smithsonian Institution, for over 22 years. Currently, as a participant coordinator of public programs, he has done extensive research on the indigenous inhabitants of the Caribbean with a social focus on the Dominican Republic. He is a frequent contributor to the Smithsonian Magazine and has written essays for the Encyclopedia of Caribbean Religions. Everybody give a round of applause for Cacique Jorge Baracutay Esteves.
Hello, everyone. First, I'd like to say it's quite an honor to be here with you. I want to thank the staff here for putting on a great show. And also, it's a great honor to be here with Cacique Martin and Jose Barreiro. Dr. Jose Barreiro and me have worked together at the museum on a project that has to do with the Taíno culture. It should be out now by January, I believe, right? So it's an exhibit about us, but not about us in the past. It's about us in the present, and I'm very proud of this effort. I have a PowerPoint presentation for you. I have to tell you, first of all, that I had to quickly put this together because somehow my flash drive where I had the original presentation, okay, you know, so it got messed up. Okay, so the dog ate my homework, yeah. All right, so I think I'm gonna have to come up here so I could, okay. So, for this project that I'm mentioning, Jose, who is also one of my teachers, I like to think of him in that way, he told me, you know, we had to go to the Dominican Republic and Jamaica and some other places, and he said, George, when you go to these places investigating Taíno culture, there are certain elements for you to look at. And this is how we basically determine what is or what is not, what has survived, what hasn't survived. So I kind of put this together based on that model. Okay, so a little bit about the Taíno people. This is what we know according to archaeological records, and is that about 7,000 years ago, people from the Yucatan started island hopping. They actually went from the Yucatan into Cuba, and they made it to maybe as far as Puerto Rico. And then about 4,000 years ago, Arawakan-speaking people started arriving from Venezuela and Guyana. Okay, what happened? Okay, here it is. Sorry. So, just to understand who the Taíno people were a mixture of a lot of different people that came across 7,000 years to the island. So I'll put this together just to, it's a very simplified version of what actually occurred, but we know for a fact that the artwork that defines what is Taíno is Chicoide and Mexicoid style. The Mexicoid style was developed in the Dominican Republic, but it went into Cuba and Jamaica, where it became the dominant style, and then in the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico, it's the Chican style. So what we call Taíno culture itself actually was developed between Puerto Rico and the Mayagüez region and the Chican region of the Dominican Republic. So, as you all know, on October 12, 1492, we were invaded by the Spanish. I like to say that on October 12, 1492, that's the year that we discovered Columbus. Why? Because we were home and Columbus was actually very lost. Okay? When you read some of the documents, the chronicles from that time, you'll see that the Spanish, you know, they had a lot of expectations as to what they were going to find in the Caribbean, one of them being gold. There was really very little gold in the Caribbean. So the next commodity was Indian slavery. Just like Martin mentioned a little while ago, you know, when they paint the version of history that you see that you read in school, especially when you're young, it's a very simplified version, and it's very cleaned up. But these woodcuts that come from that era show you exactly the atrocities that were being committed. The one here on the left, that you see all the way on the left, that was from Jamaica, where the Spanish are hunting down Taíno people using mastiff dogs. The one right in the center, that's from Cuba, and it's showing Taíno people being cut up and actually being fed to the dogs as well, to keep our dogs alive. And that's what the other woodcut says as well. And this is, like Martin said, these are things that we need to keep in mind, that these things actually happened, and we can't forget these. So, a little later, after 1492, you know, there was a slavery which was called encomienda. There was a lot of Taíno uprisings all across the Caribbean. The last noted one was in the Dominican Republic, which was Enriquillo's war. He fought a war that lasted 15 years, and afterward the Taíno people were supposedly freed, but in some way or another the Taínos were still being enslaved. And then nobody actually knows for sure exactly. No two historians can agree, but we became somehow extinct. So if you want to read more about what actually transpired, you should read a lot of the quotes by Columbus. King Ferdinand's letter to the Taíno is also a very interesting read. I suggest that you read it. Also the notes by Montesino and Bartolomé de las Casas. So Jose spoke to me about 7 markers of indigeneity that are present in in a population, and perhaps I'm not really explaining that right, but when Jose first mentioned this to me, I kind of understood what he was saying because I've been doing this for a while. So the markers are like this, for example. This is the way I put them together. There's oral tradition, agricultural practices, material culture, customs, spirituality, language, genetics, there's one that I added to it, and identity. So oral tradition. All those pictures that you see here, they're mostly from the Dominican Republic, and these are different traditions that are still very strongly survive in the Dominican Republic. For example, this is my mom and my grandmother, and we come from the town of Jaibon. And my mother told us since we were very young that you know, we knew that we came from Indian people. My grandmother was very adamant about this. The picture that you see all the way to the right, that is our village back in 1962. One of the stories that my mother always drilled into us was the story of the ciguapa, which is this creature that you see over here. The ciguapa is a story of a creature that has very long hair and its feet are inverted. Sometimes they're said to be females, sometimes they're said to be males. So when I first heard this story, this was our cuco, by the way. In our house, this was our cuco. You know, everybody knows the cuco, right? But this was our cuco. So as I got older, I became curious and I started searching out what exactly is a ciguapa, where does the story come from? Because somehow this story has become Africanized in the Dominican Republic. They try to give it an African origin. What I found is that all across the circum-Caribbean region, all the Indians from Venezuela, Brazil, they have the same exact creature. They call it curupia, caipora, siguanama, and bush dai. And the one that you see all the way to the right is the guije, which is from Cuba. And the guije, the very same story, is also found in Guyana. It's called olejigüe in Guyana. Another story that we have in the Dominican Republic is the galipote. Galipote is a shapeshifter. This is a person that could actually shift into an animal or a fruit. In South America, it's called garipoti. It's the same exact story. So basically what I do is that I gather all these stories and all these customs from the campo, and then I look at our relatives. Like, in South America you have the Arawakan people, and these are our relatives. This is where our ancestors came from. And then I try to look for connections that are found in the campo today with what's found in South America and also in the chronicles. And one of the things that I find is also what's called the Indian spirits don't eat salt. In Guyana, they say that there are certain spirits that don't eat salt. In the Dominican Republic, we are told that Indian spirits don't eat salt as well. And perhaps there's that connection is not that well, but that actually leads into something else that's a little more deeper, but I can't get into that right now. El Indio del Charco. This being that you see over here is called Opiel Guaviran, and he is a semi that supposedly lived in the Maguana region of the Dominican Republic. The story says that he walks on the ground like a dog on 4 legs. And if you can see, he's really not a dog, because the fact is that he has no features like a dog. Well, in the Dominican Republic, that story is still believed, even to this day, by the campesinos. We call him El Indio del Charco. It's basically the same story. It's supposed to be this being that lives inside caves. The campesinos, they see him when he comes out of the caves walking on his 4 legs, and usually he'll jump into the river. And so that's one of the stories, like I said, that have survived. Another thing is tying water to stop the rains. This is also a story that I find amongst the Wapishana people, that I just confirmed the other day, and also amongst the Locono people in South America. And so these are agricultural practices. Casabe, everyone here from the Dominican Republic knows what casabe is, and I'm sure that the Boricuas and the Cubans know too. Well, the casabe is made from the poison yucca, and that's the whole process there. The Dominican Republic is really, is actually like obsessed with casabe making, because when you go deep into the campos, this is part of the staple of the people, and it's, what you see down here, this is actually a yucca. That's actually a yucca. Esa es la madre de toda la yucca, right? Okay, another custom that we have is making andullo. Andullo this is the process of taking the tobacco and tying it up like you see up here, and then they buried it underground to make it ferment. This is the same type of tobacco in South America. And then these are some Taíno foods that we have today, like for example, what's called bollo, which is made from the poison of the yuca. We call that bollo. We also make the mabi, the ayaca, chacá, ajiaco, chuchueca, arepa, mamajuana, and chen. And then as for the material culture, we have these baskets that we still make all across the Caribbean. And this particular pattern that you see here, that's found in the weaving technique that's found in our baskets, are identical to the ones that they have in South America as well. And over here you have pottery making. The one on the left is from Puerto Rico, the one on the right is from the Dominican Republic. And also los bohíos. The one on the top is from Cuba. The one on the bottom is from Jamaica. That one is from the Dominican Republic, the one that just popped up, and the one on the right is from Puerto Rico from 1940. Over here you have canoe making. Canoes are still made in the Dominican Republic today. This top picture over here is from 1916. As you can see, the canoes are still very much part of our culture. Over here, this is from 1936. This is from 1936, and that's from 2009, when the Coast Guard from Puerto Rico found some Dominicans who were trying to vacation illegally in Puerto Rico. Okay, so these are some Taíno customs. In our music, in the music that's found in the Caribbean, you know, a lot of musicologists like to say that the Taínos left absolutely no influence in our music, and that's not true. The Jacana is a summer solstice song and dance that's performed once a year in the Dominican Republic. Mamboba is another. The Haitian music that's called rara also has indigenous roots. The Yagrumo that you saw Martin playing a little while ago in his group, that also is part of the rara tradition. Mahuita is cupping your hands like this and whistling into it. I don't know if you've ever seen. Exactly, that's mahuita. And then you also have what's called Neo-Taíno music. Now this one here is the Carayan. That's actually a moon dance that's still performed in the Dominican Republic to this day, and it's performed before planting any crops that have to be planted when the moon is full. And then you have also el baile de la cuyaya y el baile de la yuca. And this is one yuca dance. What happens is that when the parents are making casabe, the children, they play this game where a little boy will stand on top of the sticks, the poles, and then they move them back and forth and side to side, and then the kids compete to see who could last the longest. But there's actually 3 yuca dances. There's this one, there's also one when they plant the yuca, and there's also one when they harvest the yuca. Another tradition is, of course, making bateas. This is a picture on the left of when the Spanish first encountered batea in the Caribbean, and the one on the right is a batea from today. The man over here that you see, he's fishing with a nasa, and the nasa is a cage, a little trap, a fish trap. And when he does it, he swims from one side of the river to the other. And when he gets to the other side, the basket will be full of fish. And that's also a documented Taíno tradition. On the left, that's a nasa. And over here, this one from the one on the right is from Cuba. That is also a nasa. Like I said, these traditions are also still part of our traditions. And when it comes to Taíno spirituality, this gets really, really deep. In the Dominican Republic, we have a tradition that's called Taimani. To really understand Taimani, which is also called Agua Dulce, you have to go to this part of the Dominican Republic. This is in the San Juan de la Maguana area, but it's the most remote places. And what happens is that the people there, they believe that all the caciques are still prayed to, more or less. And they believe in certain elements that are water and stone. For example, the supreme being in Taimani is called Guamao. And when you look at the names that were recorded by the Spanish, by the Las Casas, Alonso de Ulloa, and Peter the Martyr, you see that Guamao appears. You see like Yocahu Bagua Maorocoti, Ikawana Guamao Nocon, but all of them have that guamao in there. But this is a supreme being in the agua dulce tradition. So in agua dulce, stones, casabe, water, stones, and tobacco are the central focus. The stone that you see on the top is La Piedra de Anacaona, where Anacaona was said to sit and recite her areitos. And people come from all over the island to actually pay homage to her and also to leave offerings. And the caves that you see on the right-hand side on the bottom, that's where you find religions like La 21 División or Los Liboristas, where they place their altars. They have whatever is Spanish and is Christian, and the African on one side, and then they have the Indian on another part of the cave. And over here, this is on linguistics, and these are just a bunch of names that I put down. But I'm actually working on a dictionary right now, and there are so far I have 2,800 names that I have documented, from just getting from different dictionaries. But you gotta imagine that for a people that supposedly disappeared, 500 years ago, we left a really deep impact on the Caribbean language, on the Caribbean Spanish. And then a little bit here on genetics. As most of you know already, that DNA studies have been done all across the Caribbean. So DNA, this is like DNA for dummies. DNA is something that's really hard to understand. I really don't understand it myself. But I come across it a lot, so I try to understand it. Mitochondrial DNA is the DNA that is passed down from a mother to her children, but only the female could pass it down. So this is the DNA that's actually found in the cell, in the nucleus of the cell, of the cell. So in Aruba, they found that 82% of the people in Aruba have mitochondrial DNA that's indigenous. In Puerto Rico, it's 61%. In the Dominican Republic, it's between 18 to 33%. In Cuba, is about 33%. Then you have Y chromosome DNA. The Y chromosome DNA, so far, according to the people who have done this kind of work, Y chromosome is the DNA that's passed down from the male to his male children, but the women can't transmit it. In the Dominican Republic, it's about 2% so far. And then AT DNA, which is autosomal DNA, that's the DNA that is responsible for your features, like what makes up your color of your hair, the shape of your face. So in Puerto Rico, the average is from 10 to 12. The Dominican Republic is from 8 to 10%. And Cuba, I really don't have numbers for that. But there are individuals that score even higher. Again, if the Taíno people went extinct 500 years ago, none of this should be possible. And those two names that I have down there, Tajima Hamakuchi is one group that did a study in the Dominican Republic, and Juan Martinez Cruzado from Puerto Rico. And in the Dominican Republic, where you find most of the Taíno survival is in what I like to call the triangles, because these are the regions across these mountains that when you penetrate deep into the mountains, into the countryside, that's where you see it strongest. But the fact is that Taíno culture has permeated throughout the Caribbean, throughout the island. Everywhere that you go, you'll always find at least one marker of indigeneity. And last year, I had the honor of working with Professor Haynes Schroeder, and they started doing a new kind of DNA work, which is ancient DNA testing. And basically what they were doing was that they were looking at the bones, Taíno bones, and comparing them to the modern people today. And I actually helped them in looking at some bones from the Dominican Republic. And what they found was that, as you see, you read the bottom, is that we find that the Native American ancestry present in that mixed Latino population of the Caribbean today is closely related to the ancient Taíno, demonstrating that the indigenous ancestors survived until the present day. And the reason why that's important is because historians, even though the DNA already said, yes, the Taíno people did survive, but the historians twist that and tell you that it's not enough, that whatever is there is not enough, and whatever is there is actually not from there, that it came from outside of the island as slaves or by recent migrations. But this study tells you that what is there is ancient, and it's ours and it's us. So we are directly related to the Taíno. That myth has been totally obliterated now with this study. So I'm very excited about that one. And as far as identity is concerned, we have a right to our own identity. Perhaps, a lot of people within our population are not moved by the Taíno, they might not like feathers, they might not like the way we wear our naga, but we have the right to be whoever we want, And I think it's interesting that, that the same people, almost like the people that took away, our land and things like that happened, all the atrocities, that then their descendants today, which I call theologists, are the ones who deny us, the right to be who we are, So as far as Taíno identity is concerned, this was my grandmother's passport from 1961, the year that I was born in. And in her passport, she's listed as color indio. And that's a little tricky because what happens is in the Dominican Republic, they use that term politically. In some instances, it means exactly what it says, it's indio. But in other instances, it's actually used to deny negritude. So basically in the Dominican Republic, there are no black people, they're just dark-skinned Indians, So that could be problematic. But when you speak to people that are not, part of the elite, that are not the educated, the campesinos, for them indio means exactly that, it means indio. So for my grandmother, when she would show her passport, she would say, you see, I know that I'm Indian, and look at my passport, because to her, the fact that the indio was spelled with a Y and not with an I, to her, was actually an indicator. But my grandmother told us that her grandmother was in fact full Indian on her father's side. And according to one of the DNA testing companies, which now, one of them is called 23andMe, they basically recently started doing this new test, this new thing where they tell you exactly when your last pure-blooded Indian ancestors lived. And they told me that, by the way, my grandmother was born in 1898. She died at 104 years old. And she said that her grandmother, who was born in about 1809, 1810, they said that she was the one that was full-blooded Indian. And according to what the 23andMe people are telling me now, that my last full-blooded native relative was in 1820. So again, for an extinct people, we're doing pretty good, right? So over here, native iconographies you find all over Puerto Rican, Dominican, or Cuban communities. For example, this is a store up in Washington Heights where you see Taíno petroglyphs all over the place. Over here, this is El Sol de Jayuya in Brooklyn, Atuey Cerveza, or Malta Atuey, Cerveza Atuey, etc., etc. Over here you have Conuco de la Comunidad. The word Conuco is also a Taíno word, and this is one of the ways that we subconsciously still manage our identity. It's part of who we are. And of course, oh wow, I brought that over here, so yeah, that's over there. We could talk about that later. Anyway, so what I understand about the modern Taíno movement is that, from my perspective, I remember that back in the late 80s, Puerto Ricans started getting together and questioning, saying like, wait a minute, we also have Indian ancestry, and why aren't people doing anything about this? Like, why aren't people reflecting this? And so they started getting together, and we started going to powwows. And it was interesting because once we were going to powwows, the Indian people here would look at us and say, hey, you guys belong dancing with us. So that kind of drove people to search out and research and do that. At one time, the Puerto Ricans in particular, because Puerto Ricans are the ones that have the strongest Taíno identity as far as I can see, but we would dress like North American Indians. And that's actually a Puerto Rican lady, and as you can see, she looks very indigena. The one right in the middle, that's my son when he was 10 years old. Later on, we started adopting regalia that was more akin to what our ancestors wore. I'm not going as far as what Martin said about the whole butt out and everything, but I understand the feeling, and that's another person. And then over here, this slide has to do with people's features. The ones right in the middle, those are from Cuba. As you can see, very dramatic Taíno faces. The one on the left, the one in the middle is from the Dominican Republic. And then the ones on the right are from Puerto Rico. And then over here, these are just Dominicans with native ancestry. The ones on the top are all native identified. The ones on the bottom are not, but you can see that they have Indian ancestry as well. And that's Iguayagua with some Wapishana Indians from Guyana dancing. That was from last week. And that's me, paniqueado. Things weren't going well at that moment, but it got better. And we the Taínos are still here. Thank you.
All right, everybody, we're going to take a few minutes break. So if any of you would like to go to the bathroom or get the last bit of water that we have left, feel free to do so. Please take a break for about 5-10 minutes. All right, folks? They're doing it in the Bronx. They're doing it in upstate New York and Pennsylvania. And it now has come here to our city of Newark. And it's important for all of us to come together, to stand behind leaders like Sonia, Vera, and to push forward this agenda to continue bringing awareness to our culture. So folks, please take a seat. Let me continue with our presentation here. Our next presenter is Jose Atuay Borrero. He will speak on the Taíno culture, survival, identity in Cuba. He is also a PhD, Smithsonian Scholar, emeritus, right? I apologize. Is a member of the Taíno Nation of the Antilles, one of the leading scholars of American Indian policy and the contemporary Native experience, and a pioneer activist in Native American journalist and publishing. Dr. Borrero retired in December 2016 as an assistant director for research and director of the Officer for Latino America at the National Museum of the American Indian, part of the Smithsonian Institution as well. Following the presentations in Centennial Hall, Dr. Borrero would be also signing books if we are able to tonight. No? All right. Well, let's see, God willing. Well, all right, give a round of applause for Jose Atuay Borrero.
Bueno, esto está muy bueno. Esto está muy bueno. I'm really happy to be here. They call me a teacher and professor, but I really learned from these guys a lot. They really are dedicated to picking up the pieces, you know, this turnover puzzle that happened to us. That's what colonialism is. It turns you over and it starts to pick you apart. And that's this journey that we're on now, at its base, at the moment that we're in, is about decolonizing. It's about indigenizing. And what does that mean, indigenizing? We talked a lot about identity, but indigenizing means that relationship to the land, the relationship to the base, relationship to our Mother Earth, appreciation for the elements, the sun, the moon, stars, the water, the air, the four directions we speak about. Four directions, you hear that from Native people a lot. The four directions, how to square ourselves. There's the four directions in terms of finding your way on the earth. But there's also the four cosmic directions. Find your way cosmically, find your way spiritually, find the depth of who we are. I'm from Cuba. Cuba, luckily, still of our three countries, primarily. Jamaica also belongs in here, and some of the smaller islands. But Cuba retains its Taíno name, Cuba. Cuba means large, well-planted land. Taíno name. Spanish tried to change the name, the Fernandina, a few years later to Juana, for one of their princesses. But it never took. It always came back to Cuba. So you have to wonder, why did people not appreciate, the changing of that name? Why didn't they accept that? Same with my home area, Camagüey. They called it Puerto Príncipe, but that didn't last. It reverted back to Camagüey. And so that depth, that thread that comes out of the earth when we're born, that thread has a depth inside the earth. The Maya, with whom I do quite a bit of work, I love the Maya people, and I've had the privilege of working with some of the strong Maya people that work with their calendar. And today it's Kat. It's of the 20-day cycle of the Mayan ceremonial calendar. Today it's Kat, and Kat means the net. It means the net that you throw out to catch fish. It means the net that you put your corn in. It means the net of your family. It means the fire of your family, and how that fire sometimes makes a dome with its flashy eloquence, its brilliance. That's the family. And I think that's really appropriate that today, and things don't happen without a reason, that today we're together, Puerto Ricanos, Boricuas, Cubano, Quisqueyano, we're family. We're family. Taíno is not an island. Taíno is the sea. Taíno is how we communicate with each other across the islands. And if you see our people in Cuba, which I'm going to show you without too much further, we have something perhaps a little bit more than the other islands. We're a bigger island. Cuba is about the size of Virginia, a little bit smaller than New York State. It has strong mountain chains. People were able to hide for many generations. They took to the mountains, the cimarrones, the palenques, the people who hid out from the Spanish over time, went to those mountains and got lost. And even today, after 50 years of highly conscious socialist government that knows every square inch of the country, there are still valleys where sometimes they find something they didn't realize was still there. Really remote valleys. So a little bit here just on the Taíno names of the islands. It's really amazing how much of that survives. But Cuba, Cuba is a very contested place. It's defied American imperialism, and it's not a country without problems. A lot of problems inside the country, but it is a sovereign country. It is a sovereign country, and it stood its ground. And whatever one can say about it, love them or hate that whole system, they stood their ground. And today, they are still there. It's the place I want to talk about a little bit is the far eastern tip of the country, the snout of the caiman, the snout of the crocodile that Cuba is. And it's in that triangle that you have the most native communities, especially in the province of Guantánamo, famous for the American base. And there in Guantánamo, there's a particular community of many more. There are 22 strong native communities that come out of a particular kinship group that I'm going to tell you about. Because what we have is a little bit more in the sense, because it was a large place, because it was isolated, more identity in place as Indio, as relatives, kinship group was able to survive. Well, I like to see that because when I look at Puerto Rico, when I look at Quisqueya, I see the same patterns, there's just more reduced. In Puerto Rico, it's been that kind of a community did not quite survive. It survived in the people. And so while you're pulling together, when Martin is pulling back together and other people, it's those threads that are still there and looking for our base. The Indian way, as a Seneca intellectual friend of mine from the Iroquois, John Mohawk, used to say, the Indian way is more than beads and feathers. The Indian way is the thinking tradition. There was a lot of thinking that went into our ways of life. There was a lot of thinking of generations and generations of elders who each generation, the genius in that generation, picked up one more piece of knowledge about that land, about that tree life, about the herbal life, about the animal life, about the way that the cosmos moves. And so that was added, and that was added again. And that was the piece that was seriously, seriously disrupted in the Spanish conquest. It was torn up. It was made into, again, a turnover jigsaw puzzle. And here's my cacique, Panchito Ramirez, a cacique who inherited his caciquedom, because this is a historical community. This is a community that he inherited his cacique title in 1974 from the previous cacique, Ladislao, who was cacique from the turn of the century, around 1912 to 1974. That was the great uncle of Panchito. There's a ceremony day in La Rancheria in Guantánamo. Some of the relatives getting together. Here's a little bit of the kind of conditions that people are. A lot of horseback, high up in the mountains. Curanderas doing the sobar. That's something that's done throughout the Caribbean. The use of the tobacco, the macuyo, what they call the macuyo, that's what they call the cigar, for invoking the four directions and the prayer of the macuyo. And the conuco is highly priced yet. The conuco has come to be thought about as just a field. You plant a conuco of corn, but a conuco implies an interplanting system. Panchito calls it our store in the monte. This is, you go, you pick a yucca, you plant a yucca. You pick a boniato, you plant a boniato. And that way it's always turning. It's always turning. So the kid gets sent out for the vegetables for the meal, and he comes back with it, but he knows how to plant one more. And so the conuco saved Cuba. There's a little bit on some of the evidence, the documentary trail of these communities up in the mountains. This is from 1946. After the revolution, there was a study commission to go up into those hills because Fidel Castro realized that a lot of his soldiers were Indians from up in those hills, long-haired Guajiritos that he recruited or that came to help the fight. They were his best guides, the best fighters he had, and he recognized them. And so he sent an anthropologist by the name of Manuel Rivero de la Calle to go up there and study them. Now Rivero, and this is a picture of him doing an interview with one of the residents up there. He was a physical anthropologist, so it was an anthropometric study. High cheekbones, the hair, the face, those kinds of qualities that are thought to be definitive of a human being. But in fact, he was able to prove that. And so in that sense, it was valuable because in Cuba, the same as all islands, the notion of extinction was settled. They said that was it. There's just no more. You cannot speak of Indians. You cannot speak. Now they accepted this, but it was descendants of Indians. So there was always still that separation from the past that was imposed. And of course, as you will see in all of these headlines, there's always a sense of doom, extinction. The epitaph for the American Indians, one before was also along the same lines of the last Indians of Cuba. Well, it's been the last Indians for a lot of generations now, and those generations are growing. So we're seeing, again, this is some of that work that he was done. But then we're seeing the agency of Panchito. The moment he became cacique, he started going out with his dance group, taking part in culture fairs around Guantánamo, around the region. At first he wasn't accepted, but then he kept pushing, and it went from that kind of lack of recognition to a very strong recognition. And finally, and this is a book that I did first in 2001 with him, a testimony, oral testimony of his life and his knowledge, that I had to publish with an alternative press in Santiago, almost hidden in 2001, and took a lot of guff from Cuban authorities for having published that book. But now last year it was published by Casa de las Americas. Casa de las Americas is the Cuban primary publishing house. When Casa de las Americas publishes it, it's because the national authorities have said there's something to this. And so it began to change that consciousness. This is from a conference back when. These are the two reinas, two of the elder women, very strong women. No, I'm sorry, this reina on the right, on the left is the other reina's daughter, Idalis, who has surfaced in recent years as a very strong woman leader and likely to inherit the cacique title from Panchito. I asked him one time, of all your kids, and he has 4 daughters and 4 boys as well, who's gonna replace you? And he said, well, it doesn't have to be one of my children. It can be nephews, preferably if it's a nephew, which is interesting because it's that matrilineal context that's still alive. But then he said, you know, this one, he knows about 60% of what I know. And this one, he knows about 80% of what I know. Idalis, she knows 140% of what I know. So that was his way of signaling it's coming to her. She's a dreamer and a very strong community leader. People follow her. In 2003, as a result of the new repatriation laws that went into effect in the United States when the National Museum of the American Indian was created, which is essentially created to combat the idea of extinction, the idea of a living culture, that all these artifacts in museums, there's not just old bones and old archaeology, this is living culture. So the museum started out very strong. There was a big challenge to the Smithsonian and to museology in general about how to depict Indian people and how to depict people so that they could represent themselves. And so there was a new methodology that got started there. It's a little bit shaky now. I have my criticisms of it, how it's been developing recently, but the methodology was you don't show any materials that the elders of that community don't approve, don't go through with you, so you have a real living sense of the culture and a respect. And so in 2003, in the midst of the Bush era, tough times going on, we were able to effect a repatriation of human remains, the Taíno human remains that were in the NMAI. And it's very interesting because the U.S. repatriation law, especially as administered by the National Museum of the American Indian, requires that those remains go to a community of relatives. The Cubans in the government in Havana, very far away from this area, say, oh, wonderful, we'll get these bones, we'll give them over to the archaeologists, we'll study them. We have to say, no, this has to go to a community. Well, we don't have any Indians here. Oh, yes, you do. Don't you read your own damn literature? Look at all this stuff. Your own government did this. And of course, there was Panchito over there, you know, crying in the wilderness. And so we were able to, in 2003, with Panchito officiating and his older ladies backing him up and advising him, that the repatriation took place. Here again, he's intoning with the Macuyo, the four directions prayer. The actual repicture. Some of the guys over here earlier, Wakonash was there for this, Sivana Khan, who we lost touch with, and other folks. Panchito made a pledge, or when the first night I met him, he said, I want you to promise me to help me do this. I want us to get better known. Queremos darnos a conocer. Estamos aquí, queremos darnos a conocer. Queremos conocer nuestras familias que se han ido bajando de la montaña a diferentes lugares. So we want to learn, be known. We want to have our people know each other, and we want to meet other Indians from other places in the Americas. And there has been a calumny, a lie told about our history, he said, especially these folks who are called the Rojas Ramirez, and I'll tell you why in a minute, because they say in the history books that we were traitors to the Cuban independence movement in the 1890s. And in fact, at the beginning of the war with Spain in 1895, Jose Marti's war, there had been a previous war 25, 30 years earlier, 1868 to 1878. The Spanish figured out the Indians were pretty tough to fight. So when that war ended, they made every kind of overture, including granting new lands so that the folks would pacify and the Indian people in particular would feel close to the Spanish government. So at the beginning of the war in 1895, the Indians joined, a group of Indians did join the Spanish, and they were the only people ever that were able to ambush the great black general of Cuban independence, Antonio Maceo, who nobody could mess with. Maceo was 500 combats. In 500 combats, the only people who ever ambushed them were those Indians that were fighting against them, only for about 3 months at the beginning of the war. Then there was a huge, beautiful story of how that whole group of Indian people in 1895, not 300 years ago, in 1895 formed the Atuey Regiment, El Regimiento Atuey of infantry. That's written in the annals, the documentation from that war. Many of his ancestors, Panchitos, as he knew from oral history, fought really strongly in that war. And in fact, they have a valiant history of their participation in that war. But what we did for Panchito was help him move around. Here in Camagüey, he went to visit. This is a group of about 70 of his people who are now on the northern coast of Camagüey. They've migrated because of the special period in time of peace, what they call, in Cuba, Cuba became very dependent on the Soviet Union. Probably the biggest mistake they made was their agriculture. They turned it completely over to the Soviet, huge state farms, huge machinery, high petroleum input. When the Soviets collapsed in 1989, 1990, the petroleum that was going into Cuba collapsed as well. From 1 month to the next, they dried up, completely dried up. So the agriculture of all those farms, they're still there. All that machinery is rusting 20 years later. Nothing else was ever done. But they were not able to do away with the small farmers, the mountain farmers, the farmers in the plains, Guajiro. You guys have your Jíbaro, no? Nosotros have Guajiro, no? Both Taíno words. Washeri used to be the term, which meant it was a class of people under the Taínos, and so there were the Guajiros. Those are my people. I'm from Camagüey. I'm Guajiro from Camagüey. I came to this country as a young man, already knowing the stories of the Cahueiro, the shapeshifters, and the Hiwes, the little people that guard the waterways. And so I ended up as a young refugee, 12 years old in Minnesota in 1960. That's a long story. But I ended up among Indian people in Minnesota, Ojibways, Anishinaabe. And I remember sitting around with the elders and hearing about the little people and the shapeshifters. I thought, we have all that. We have all that. Where does that come from? It doesn't come from the Spanish. It doesn't come from Africa either, although the African population adapted it as well. And there was a real blending, as there was a tremendous amount of intermarriage between African and Taíno. So it's obvious that it fuses into one people, but the foundation is the matrilineal. It's the matria, not necessarily just patria. That sends us back to Spain often. Matrilineal, and that was the Taíno women. And that's who taught the herbs, who taught the cropping of the Taíno systems, who taught many things to the young generation. So we survive because of the women's culture. We survive because of the grandmothers, as having an inner identity that we translated into Cubano, Puerto Riqueño, Dominican Republic, etc. ¿no? Traducimos a las nuevas nacionalidades. But the foundation wasn't forgotten. And so, right from the beginning, all that teaching, all that ability to survive on these lands, all the way of looking at it, the way of seeing that tremendous variety of trees and what each one is good for, And all that knowledge is up there. Panchito's incredible. We did a little experiment one day just in La Rancheria, just one village. And we came up with 100, and it was almost 170 herbs in common usage. The women came up with about 70 of them. The young kids under 12 years old, we divided the 3 groups, but they wanted to divide it to have a competition. The young kids under 12 knew about 45. And we asked them, how come the little guys know so much? And they said, well, who do you think goes to pick the herb when mama needs it, you know? They sent me to the woods to go get it. So we know all about it, or at least what they knew. The men knew the most, but that's because of Panchito. He was on their side, and that was kind of unfair. He knows it all, you know, so that's why he's cacique. The cacique has to know it all. The cacique has a tremendous responsibility. Nobody should ever want to be a cacique. I refuse myself. Pero me gusta jalarle las orejas de vez en cuando a los caciques, ¿no? I like to pull their ears a little bit. Sometimes they get a little beside themselves. But we need caciques. We need leaders. We need them. You know, if they're with the people, if they're of the people. You know, and that's what I always look for. I always get afraid when men get strong in leadership. I get a little bit afraid of that charismatic leadership. That one that's going to run over the hill, you know, and everybody going to follow over the hill. So I always watch. If he's got strong women around him that are not afraid, speak their mind, then it starts to look better, you know. It starts to look better for me. Because we're by nature social animals. We're not alone, you know. We can't be alone. That cacique, that caudillo, that idea of the big guy that's going to talk to 1 million people and tell them all what to do, that's over with. This new generation doesn't accept that. It just doesn't. This new generation is network, you know, like the day to day. So, what happened in Cuba, I'm a little bit out of whack here, but what happened in Cuba was that the encomienda, you know, the Spanish, for all their brutality, I will say this about the Spanish, they were the only European power that actually had a debate inside of the society about whether what they were doing in the Americas was right or not. They were very brutal, especially the first ones, because what got here was soldiers that had fought. The first group that came was all war people that had fought the Arabs or the Moors in Spain for 800 years. Tough people. And for them to kill was nothing. So that's what first came. But then we had Montesinos, and we had Father Las Casas. And Las Casas was not just a writer. Las Casas was quite a campaigner. He survived several assassination attempts by the encomendados, you know, who were trying to kill him for what he was trying to do. And he succeeded in establishing a policy in Spain called La Experiencia. So as of the 1550s, whole encomiendas of Indios were given their freedom. And in Cuba, it happened more than in other places. There were still large encomiendas of Conquistador Velázquez, and even the bishop had a large encomienda. When they had to give them freedom by the king's decree, and they did, and this happened in the 1550s, they established pueblos de indios. Iguaní was one, and here in El Caney, where in the church of El Caney, still today, this is from last year, the escudo, what's this escudo? Huh? The Excelsior, yeah, shield as well. Anyway, it's still there. And the old cacique, the first cacique of El Caney, is buried in that church. That dates back to the 1550s. That jurisdiction of El Caney lasts as an Indian jurisdiction, not just families, farms owned by Indian families, as a jurisdiction, like a reservation, like an actual township, to 1850 was when the Audiencia of Camagüey established that El Caney no longer had an Indian jurisdiction because it had intermarried with other people. The Indians did not accept that. They said, we still have actually many families who have never intermarried, but we have intermarried, and they're still our children. And so, it was imposed by, and then it was actually decreed in 1850 I have the document. The Indian race is no longer in existence. It's declared extinct. Because the colonos, the new colonos that had come from after the Haitian Revolution to Cuba, there were coffee people, and they wanted those lands for their coffee plantation. And that's how the dozens, if not hundreds, of Indian families of El Caney removed from those areas further up the mountains. Calidad de los Indios, La Ranchería, El Escondite de Indio, La Escondida, all those places are still up there. When they were given their freedom, they were given mass baptisms. So hundreds perhaps, maybe more, 1,000, 1,500, were given the last name of the governor of Cuba, Manuel Rojas. So they became the Rojas group. That wasn't one or two families like some anthropologists and historians have come to believe. It was hundreds and hundreds of people with that last name. The bishop, Miguel Ramirez, of Santiago de Cuba, same thing. So you have the Rojas and Ramirez, big clans of Rojas who began to intermarry and exclusively intermarry. They did not want to marry anybody else. They did, here and there, but the trunk continued. So they adapted. They had Spanish. They had Castillo, other names that came in. They had African Cubans, Afro-Cuban people that went up there that escaped from slavery or just intermarried over the years, settled there. So you have that mixture, but the trunk, because it's through the women, the trunk is what is important. You marry in. Already there's an existence. That marriage doesn't dilute you. It just adds. It just adds like a good salad. You still got the base. Now here's Almenares, Indian elder from El Caney, photographed by an American anthropologist at the time, or archaeologist, Cullen. Today, going with Panchito, his son and daughter, moving about, meeting these families, still in El Caney, where they said there's no Indians left. Everywhere we went, we find Indians. This is in 2012. The old man there is a rastrero. It's a curandero by the tracking cure, a very old Indian ceremony that's still done. Very secretive, very few people know about it. The rastreros can never charge. They can't even accept a gift for their spiritual work. You know, because a lot of times they say, well, we don't charge, but you know, you can give me something. No, they won't do that. They have to have the highest piedad, pity for the afflicted person or animal. It's a lot to say about that ceremony. Here he is he works with a tree, the almácigo, and I won't go through the whole ceremony, what they do and so forth, but finally, this was Casa de las Américas in 2014 when Panchito was invited to give a talk to represent Cuban Indians at a Cuban-organized international indigenous conference, preparing the delegations that were going to the United Nations. For the first time, Panchito and his daughter showed up, and Panchito was recognized as a cacique. When the Soviets collapsed, what saved Cuba from starvation, 1990, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, through the 90s, and there was very serious nutritional deficiencies going on. About 20,000 people went blind from deficiencies. I mean, it collapsed. There was no food. The only food, people were crazy, especially in the big cities, out in the countryside, looking for anything they could eat. They invented all kinds of weird foods just to survive. What saves Cuba? The Taíno tubers, la yuca, el ñame, el boniato. That's what saves Malanga. That's what people began to plant right away. Corn and beans. That began to come up right away. That's what saved Cuba from starvation. It's not lost on people. I remember going into those mountains in the 1990s, and there's clinics everywhere. Cuba has a good health system, as everyone knows, but there was no medicine. The synthetic medicine, the industrial medicine was not coming in. Shelf after shelf, it was all herbal extracts. That's what people lived on. That's what people survived. And the Cuban population, the maybe 60% that had completely forgotten this stuff, had to adapt to it, had to do it, had to go back to the basics, you know, and that reminded people of who they were, who we are as people, what do we have, what do we rely on. Food security, food sovereignty is a big deal, and that has been Panchito's message. Here he is with some Mayan delegates to that same conference. Panchito's message throughout his public speaking career in the last 25, 30 years has been all about food, has been all about Mother Earth, has been all about taking care of our mother, you know, taking care to make real prayers, you know, listen to your dreams, find out who you are. That's health. That's how he imparts a healthy lifestyle, a healthy mindset to his young people by going back, by going down. Like you saw those little boys and girls here dancing, you know, and they'll never forget that. That's not like we have to reconstruct things and fight for it. They're coming up in it. They're coming up in it. They'll never know that there was a big machine saying you're extinct because there's people now. And what does it mean? What does it really mean? Because it's more than beats and feathers. It's more than just dancing, you know? It's about our connection to the Mother Earth. And it's about preparing for the conditions. As many elders, I've done a lot of work with elders for 40 years, 45 years. And I remember way back then in the 70s when the Indian movement was getting going here. And they looked at what was going on, the insults on Mother Earth. And they really didn't believe that much, the elders, in being able to hold back the white man. They said it's a machine. It's a machine. They said, prepare to meet the conditions. That's what they told their people. Prepare to meet the conditions. It is going to change. The world will change. Climate change, pollution, all the issues that were coming up, and we see that today. And we see that it's almost unstoppable because there's no political will. Because that white man mentality has taken over. And don't misunderstand me. When I say white man, I'm not speaking race. There's Indian white men, and there's black white men. I'm talking a mentality, a rapacious mentality of commodity making. Everything is a commodity. Everything can be sold. Everything can be manufactured and sold. And you can be destroyed. You can destroy that river because I don't have to care about it because I'm going to go to the bank. But that next generation is going to have to eat that raw sewage, you know. And that's what we're seeing, valley after valley, river after river, stream after stream, everywhere. That consciousness that the colonizers, the first consciousness, the first evil of the colonizers was to separate us as human beings from our environment, from our spiritual relationship to our environment. Se me duerme el cacique, pero yo sé que él sabe esto. There's the Dalis being interviewed, breaking out the voice. This is a Wajira woman, you know, this is a woman from the mountains. She can do anything in those hills. And top of that, she's a dreamer and a healer, and a very well recognized one. But now she's breaking out. Indian media from Mexico, from Guatemala, are coming to Cuba to interview her. You know, the authorities still don't quite know what to make of all this because it's a new generation. Something new is happening. Cuba will have to resolve its issues from the inside, not from the outside, from the inside. There's Panchito giving his talk, you know. It's amazing for Panchito to be able, and what did he say? Love the land, love our mother, you know. Not because he learned it in a book or for some hippie thing or another. It's what he knows from his grandma, you know, just like we're talking about. It's what he knows. There's this little map with the asentamientos of the Rojas Ramirez. With, you know, what they used to say didn't exist. We found 22 communities of the Rojas Ramirez. We have a huge gathering coming now in the next few months. Well, aquí me va para la gente de ustedes. Pero what I wanted to say the most is that we see a country that fell apart in the 20th century. In the late 20th century, it fell apart because of its dependence on petroleum products, on large industrialized agriculture, and it separated the people from the land. And that, in that sense, it was a bad ideology by the Marxists, just like it was a bad ideology by the capitalists. It was a bad ideology to separate the people from the land. For the Marxists, it was saving the people from the oppression of having to do backbreaking labor. And it's true, if you're an oppressed peasant, that somebody's stealing your crop, or you have the rural guard come over and putting a gun on you, la Guardia Rural that exists in Cuba, well, yeah, then your life's a really miserable life. You're being kept in that condition oppressively. But if you have a culture of the land, if you have a culture of spirituality, if your well-being spiritually comes out of that relationship, if your parents support that, your grandparents support that, there's a lot of health in that, a lot of mental health, a lot of strength, a lot of good living. And that's what people love. And that's difference. That's not poverty. Poverty is the oppression and the lack of culture and still having to do that. But when you have a philosophy of it, when you have a dream about it, when you have a clear knowledge that that's the other economy. You know, we have the cash economy. We tell our kids, professionalize, get training, get a job. Need to do it. We live in that. But there's another economy, directly from the earth. What you eat, what you can manufacture from there, how to put food away, how to cook it properly, how to do so many things. The knowledge that it takes to live in a mountain village is incredible compared to what an academic person learns. Academic person learns this much. These guys are spread out all over. They know it all. They know it all, and it's being passed down. So it's in Cuba. It's here. You know, it's right here in New York and Jersey. No matter where you are, you know you have to relate to what a human being is. You know you have to relate to those values that are indigenous values. And there's some major values that cut across. You know, one, world alive. Indigenous spirituality is about the world being alive, not just on a cross. I don't want to offend anybody, but it's not this unified idea that you can only pray that way. The world is alive, the water is alive, that plant is alive. And anybody who works with that knows that. Panchito, you know his people, they ask permission from that plant. They leave a little bit of tobacco seed, and then they pick that little leaf, and they say, give me your energy, give me your power. I'm sorry I have to hurt you. He prays, he apologizes to the earth before he plows. He said, I know I have to cut you. I'm sorry. I mean, that's the kind of mentality they have. It's very sharp, it's very clean, it's clear. What's better than that? All human beings belong to that. We've been separated from it. And the way the world is going, we have to prepare to meet the conditions, folks. We have to prepare to meet it. Look at these storms. Everybody's got their head in the sand. There's no political will in this country to deal with that. We got 3 storms going on simultaneously. That used to be one every 5 years was bad. Then you had a couple of little hurricanes. Now it's every year. We just started the hurricane season. Drought. Fires. The West is on fire. Really, literally on fire. It didn't happen 20 years ago that way, 30 years ago. It did not. It's a lie. We forget. And we get, it's like that water in the frog in the cold water. You keep adding boiling water, and he doesn't notice until he's boiled. He doesn't jump out because he adapts to it. And then he dies. And that's where we're going. And that's why I think Taíno is so important. To me, Taíno is all about that. It's about decolonizing our minds. And we're going to make mistakes. We make lots of mistakes. We're egotistic human beings. We got taught to be egotistic, to be individualistic, to go off for the possessions all the time, rather than the human feeling. But Taíno, we're going to make our mistakes. I tell all these guys, sometimes people, they fight over things, the leadership. And 2 things. Always remember, the children are watching us. Because 30 years ago, we were a novelty. Now we're 2 generations later, and we're still at it. And, you know, the new thing, the new movement. 30 years, 35 years. How many said, oh, a passing fancy, it's a fad, it's like Scientology, you know, Hasli Vera, you know, that was his argument, Professor Vera. Oh, they're like Scientologists, they're like Norsemen, they're like KKK even, you know, they're racist. None of that was true. None of that was true. He was sitting in some office somewhere doing that nonsense. It's not about that. So there are many currents. We're young. We're a young movement. We're just reforming. This won't come to fruition for 30, 40 more years. Realistically, all those currents, they're meeting. But we're going deeper, folks. We're going deeper. And that's what we owe our ancestors, and that's what we owe our generations ahead. Because we have to prepare them. We have to prepare them for a heart and mind, you know, that relates. World alive. The world is alive. Spiritually alive. Everywhere you turn, this is alive. Everything is alive. We're living in heaven. Appreciation is another thing. You won't see an Indian ceremony anywhere without appreciation. The principle of appreciating the Mother Earth and all the other elements. Appreciation. Reciprocity with the plant and with each other. Today for you, tomorrow for me. My arms are yours, but your arms are mine. There's no Indian village in the hemisphere that doesn't have that principle as one of its main elements. Appreciation, reciprocity, duality, the opposites. The opposites, night and day, man, woman, left, right, cold, cold. It's part of nature. And then out of those values are new rationales, different ways of thinking, different ways of philosophizing. Because this society ain't gonna give it to you. This is all going to the top. This is all going to the top. And unfortunately, they're turning what used to be and what can be and should be a good relationship with police forces, with service providers, turning that into an enemy kind of action. Us and them, the hatefulness that has come. So the society is not resolving a damn thing. You never see a solution. It's just getting worse and worse. It's up to the people. It's up to the people. We gotta put our hand on it. We gotta put our hand on it. Represent it. Some people just represent it. Some people do their artwork. Some people do organic farming. Some people make movies. Some people put up events. But it's all going forward. I talked about nothing of what I meant to talk about. I had hoped my publisher, I did a novel on this subject many years ago, Taínos called, and they had promised me they would have my book here so that people could sign it. It's an old book, but it's a novel, you know, it can still be read. And they didn't get it here, and that's a whole story, how that novel came to be written and what I went through to do it. But I'll save it. Maybe I'll be able to come back at some point and talk about that, because that's a whole other story. I love you all. Carry on. Go for it.
Okay, folks, give yourselves a round of applause. You guys were a great audience today. Also give a round of applause to the caciques, as well as the elder brother, Jose Batuet. It's much appreciated. This is beautiful and a lot to take in. I hope you guys came in here with your brains like sponges and soaked up all of this great knowledge that's been bestowed upon us today. It is very important that we continue the mission to spread awareness of the Taíno cultures that exist still today and that has never gone extinct. And keep in mind, I love to shed light on the connection between the Dominican, Puerto Rican, and Cuban, and Jamaica connection of the Taíno culture, because it doesn't exist on just one island. You understand that? And understand that colonization has created us to have a mindset to where we ourselves are self-racist. to where we can't accept a person because their features are different or because their skin color is dark or light skin. Our roots, our genetics speaks for itself. Our pride, our love for the culture, it's universal. You understand? And to just to connect with what Jose was talking about, Mother Earth, it's very important. It is very important to reconnect yourself with Mother Earth. She gives us life. You understand? And she is a thinking being as well, just like the Taíno. Her mind is universal in the cosmos. Her spirit breathes life and allows us to breathe with it. And her body is the land that we live off of. Respect her and respect yourselves. You understand? We are a people that are rebuilding a foundation. We are spreading our roots. It's very important. If you're sitting in this room today, it doesn't matter where you're going back home to. What you gain today, spread it. These are seeds that have been planted in the minds, in the soil of your brain. Allow others to come and shed water on it so that that root can begin to grow and that tree can expand your consciousness and help you have an understanding and the great meaning of our indigenous culture. It is real. You know what I'm saying? In this modern day, we are a generation of consumers. Shouldn't be like that. We need to be a generation back to its source, back to our roots. And this is what the calling is spiritually. And I know a lot of you feel it. The turn of the century, 2000 to 2008, was a strong spiritual consciousness upliftment throughout the world. And I know it called a lot of you. Some of you may have lost yourselves. Some of you may have found your way back to great brothers and sisters like the folks that came here today to bring this great knowledge and wisdom and understanding of our culture. It's important that we continue to bring that out there and to solidify the culture and to bring our people back home, all right? So thank you again. My name is Victor Enoch Gavilanes, the president of the Lost Tribes Foundation, also a community activist here in the city of Newark. And I would like to give thanks to Sonia Vera, the Puerto Rican Day Parade, as well as the Newark Library for allowing us to have this event here. And for all of you who worked hard to make this successful, thank you. Thank you, and let's continue to have more of this. You can find us at 35 Stone Street. We have a community garden. That's where we should start. Folks in Newark, 35 Stone Street, Stone Crane Garden. It hasn't been utilized this year, so it's sitting there waiting for you to touch it. Come out, help us revitalize our land, help us reconnect with Mother Earth, and help us teach our communities the knowledge that these folks have brought upon us. Thank you, peace.
And let's give a warm applause also to Enoch for his excellent job this evening doing the presentation. And on behalf of the Newark Public Library, I want to say that it has been a privilege. It's been a privilege to open our doors and to work with Sonia, with the parade, with everyone who has made, who traveled over here today and participated in this excellent encuentro, this encounter. And it's the beginning. We're just opening the doors, and I feel so, I want to say that unfortunately we did not receive the books that we were supposed to have here today, Dr. Barreiro. So we are going to bring him back at a later date so that he can present his book and we can have another encounter. So thank you everyone who has been here today. We appreciate you. Buenas noches.